Hello, everyone. Welcome to our monthly lunch and learn session. I thank you guys for joining. So, we're going to get started here shortly. We love opportunities to get started on time. We know your time is extremely valuable. We have some great information that we want to share today with you about what's happening with Medicare opportunities, especially for medical practice. And so, I kind of want to kind of go into that and talk to you a little bit about what we're doing and how we can help your medical practice grow in this new age of healthcare. So thank you for joining today. I hope you're enjoying your lunch right now. It's right before a holiday for some people in the United States. Monday is a holiday, so thank you for just taking the time to listen to this. So we're going to get it started right away. We like to be on time, proficient with our time here. So I'm going to pull up this screen so you guys can see my screen. So as we get started here, please ask questions. As we kind of go through this, this is going to be relevant information, stuff that I think will be extremely helpful as you kind of navigating the new normal or what's happening in the world of healthcare. So thank you for your time today. And so we'll get started here shortly. So let me pull up our slide here. So, and okay, so hopefully you guys can see my screen here. So we'll go ahead and get started and present. Great. So, hi everyone. Thank you for your time today. I'm Theo Harvey. I'm going to go over how to grow your medical practice or clinic with our new value system. We hope this training will help you understand, especially if a medical practice or clinic who's looking to get in some of these new reimbursable opportunities. This program will kind of walk you through how this works and how you can benefit from them for the future. So we'll get started here and kind of go over these programs and some of the things that we've learned from implementing this for thousands of patients. So we'll go ahead and get started here shortly. So goal today, we really want to highlight the lessons learned after working on value-based programs with medical practices across the country. We want to show also how medical practice can scale the existing programs and then really how the value framework works. This is a framework we built over the last several years, and we believe this will really help you as you kind of grow your programs and look at how you can benefit what's happening there in your healthcare organizations as you kind of grow and scale. So our experience, we deployed remote care programs for over 10,000 patients past half decade. So, with my company SynsorMed, we worked with everyone from, large one physician practice groups to large payer organizations, and we have a deep technical expertise backed with funding from Google. So we definitely understand the technology that goes into these type of programs to help you scale above and beyond where you're at if you're looking at kind of doing these type of programs. So we can definitely talk in more detail and how we can kind of help with that as we move forward. So before we begin, just want to make sure, time check, typically roughly about 30 minutes of your time to go over all this. And just want to make sure that everyone is seeing everything as they should. So I just want to make sure that we are good here. So it looks like the screen is up. Everyone can see everything and we're good to go. So awesome. Great. So let's keep moving. All right, guys, thank you for your time. So let's talk a little bit about the lessons learned. As a group of organizations that we worked with, there's a lot of things that we've learned of implementing these type of programs, with tens of thousands of patients. And so we want to kind of deep dive and give specific learning lessons of what we saw over the past several years. So really the importance of patient recruitment is really critical. We believe patient selection should be based on clinical needs. So basically, a lot of these programs require a specific diagnosis. For instance, if you're looking at implementing a program called remote patient monitoring, there's several diagnosis codes like hypertension, like diabetes, like COPD, that have to be clear of what you're trying to achieve with these programs. So, and then also you want to make sure that, it's hypertension is not because, they have hypertension one or two times. It's something that has to be uncontrolled, right? Something that they aren't able to control. And you want to make sure that this is a program that is beneficial to them. Behavioral health integration programs are really important, especially now with the importance of mental health. So making sure there's a clinical need from that standpoint before you implement any of these programs. And then patient desire. We definitely think that, that is super important when you think about how the patients want to, be a part of these programs. And the way we kind of look at it is you have to look at consent forms. And what does that mean? So that means basically understanding, typically these programs require some kind of verbal consent, but we highly recommend you look at actually having paper that the patients utilize in order to kind of provide them with the help that they need when it comes to understand these programs. And typically, this consent form, has information around purpose, like, what is this about? How is it important for them to be a part of this? The goal, right? Typically, patients are able to be a part of these programs if they understand what the goals are, right? And they have uncontrolled hypertension, then, the goal is to kind of get that more under control. A1C levels are high. Monitoring consistently with a glucose monitor is important for knowing that they want to lower it over time. Really, also, because a lot of these programs, there could be co-pays and co-insurance involved, you want to just make sure the patient's aware of potential financial requirements. But by level setting with the patient, what this is about, what the goals are, and obviously the importance of being on it, and any, surprises that may come up is really important to ensure that patients stay on the program for the long term. We found by implementing these consent forms, written consent forms, it's almost like a contract, and they feel more obligated to stay on the programs longer. And so this is something that we've seen has been extremely valuable with the programs that we worked with across the country. So also, you want to think about how do you make it easy for patients to onboard, right? Typically, what we see is a minimum of 3 contacts before you start any program for patient. We obviously have the office introduction by the clinician. So basically the doctor, nurse practitioner, the lead clinician that's working with the patient on their care plan and helping them with their care just overall, especially if you suffer from, chronic conditions. That has to come from them, right? That overall understanding of why this is important and why they need to be a part of the program. Then next we get into the front office overview. So typically, the doctor had communicating them what they want to be, why this patient needs to be on this program. Then the front office, their goal is to ensure that the patient follows up, right? What is all about details, that's where you kind of talk about the consent form. Or for instance, before they leave the office, they can be able to point them that they have to be getting more information in the mail in the form of the consent documentation and other steps to get started with it. And then finally, we do recommend before the patient starts the program officially, a remote nurse follow-up call, right? So this is basically the clinician combined with the front office overview and really kind of, understanding the purpose of why they're doing it, the goals, and understanding what the next few steps are. We found that making this 3-step process of contacts with the patients really ensures that the patients stay on board as long as they need to be. And that's really key. You can't just, surprise patients with, say for instance, devices, or put them on a chronic care program where, nurses are calling them like twice a month. They have to be prepared. And the more you prepare them, just like anyone, the more you prepare anyone, the better they are to accept and receive the opportunity that's before them. So making that clear has been really beneficial. And we've seen retention roughly around 85% when patients are onboarded this way. So, and then finally, patients need connection every week to stay compliant. So there's several ways to do that, but the goal here is to ensure the patient is getting constant reinforcement feedback, right? Because it can seem like they're in a vacuum, right? Yes, they're trying to, take care of their health, eat better, monitor their blood pressure, for instance, or, take care of their mental health. But, if they're not having that human connection or some kind of connection that follows up with them, they can get lost in the shuffle. And that's true for anyone. And what we found is definitely clinician calls are extremely important. And luckily, Medicare and Medicaid services, they allow for reimbursements for that time that's needed from a clinician call. And that clinician call could be anyone from a mid-level or a nurse or even a medical assistant, but someone that's communicating with the patient, once a week, just to stay connected. But in lieu of that, right, we definitely believe in automation, and automation can be in the form of, artificial intelligence or some kind of automated way that's constantly reaching out to the patient, just check in on them, right? We call them maybe notifications or some personalized kind of content that just really engages them on why they're doing this, and more importantly, that someone is looking at this, right? Because if they're doing it in a vacuum, they may forget, they may not know what's going on. But if that constant reinforcement, it starts to form that habit. It typically takes, 2 weeks, maybe 21 days or so, 2 to 3 weeks to form a habit. So having that constant reach out, now the patients are saying, okay, I'm expected to do this to take care of my health better. I will start to change my behavior over time. And we've seen that being extremely beneficial to keeping patients compliant, but more importantly on the programs as long as they need to be. So those are some key lessons learned, from doing this, and hopefully you can take that to heart as you start to build out your remote care, virtual care programs. So how do you scale existing programs? Well, typically, let's talk about the cycle of launching new initiatives in medical practices, right? First, you kind of start a new program, right? And then you kind of launch with a few patients on the program, which is great. We're excited to get started there. And then after 6 months, you see no growth, and then you cancel the program. And then guess what? There's a new program that got launched, right, by CMS, and it goes around and around and around, right? And the lack of progress in launching these new programs to help patients stay compliant and stay engaged in their own healthcare is definitely something that a lot of practices struggle with, because they realize that maybe they have issues with turnover with mid-levels, or the programs are just not as sustainable financially for them for the long term. And so really kind of thinking ahead of the curve before you kind of start these programs is really going to be key to making sure they're extremely successful. So the secrets to scale in our mind is definitely you want to plan to launch large. Yes, that could be a little scary, but if you lay out the plan, the purposes, and then the goals, you can definitely make sure that it makes sense for the program, for the practices. We found that those who launch large, tend to have a bigger focus on it, but more importantly, stay more engaged with the programs long term, the medical practices that we work with. And more importantly, there is a care that's brought to it, right? It's only relevant to everyone when you're kind of focused all in on a big goal together. And that really kind of brings the office together, and the different office sites, right? If you have multiple office sites that are trying to implement this, it just really kind of makes sure you really have a purpose, as opposed to maybe launching with a couple of patients. And that's fine if you're doing like trials or demos, but after you have to kind of go all in and invest in order to see the benefits to your bottom line when it comes to potential revenue opportunities from reimbursements, but more importantly for patient care. We've seen tremendous help with patients who will kind of utilize the technology, software solutions, education, getting the help they need at home when they need it most, and avoiding those costly ED visits. So if you're going to go, we recommend going large and really planning for that. Second, they have a special projects lead to coordinate. So basically, you're looking at different folks, right, across the continuum of healthcare. You have your doctors, your mid-levels, right, who care about the patient's long-term, physical health, right, understanding what their numbers are, making sure they have lab work. Second, you have the billers, right, because it's tied to reimbursements, making sure they meet all the requirements and how that's set up. And then finally, you have vendors, right, who are helping you augment maybe your staff, or even providing the technology to make it possible to even do this, right? All of these kind of have to be coordinated, and we definitely recommend, and that could be your practice admin, or it could be someone you kind of bring up who can kind of help shepherd this project along. But you need someone that is ready to step up and to manage these different processes, right? And once the initial launch is started, then typically it's maintenance at that point. And that's why we recommend the consistent meetings with vendors, lastly, because if you have the consistent messaging, right? Typically things are happening, changing all the time. New technologies, new tool sets, new policies that have been implemented, right, to kind of encourage you to understand what new reimbursements you can take advantage of. Or, for instance, every year, physician fee schedule is communicated, and the rules are slightly changed, right? One year with one program, you couldn't outsource nurse services, right, to treat the patient. Then the next year you could, right? Or one instance you had a little bit more broader range of how long a patient had to be using a device. Now it's more specific to like 16 days or more. So these are constantly changing, and you have to have a communication style to make sure you understand what changes need to be made into your processes. Because if you have processes that are set and workflows, which is totally key for a lot of medical professionals, right? Because that's how you are able to help so many patients. These workflows need to be modified, and the only way you do that is just having that constant communication with your vendors to make sure that you're aligned together for the best of the patient. So we highly recommend you kind of do that. So let's talk a little bit about, like, a case study. Georgia Heart Physicians. This is Dr. Chuck out of, he's a large, they have several thousand patients who are what we call cardiologists in the rural Georgia area. And they really want to kind of do these programs. And to them, the benefit was they're in a rural area. A lot of patients have uncontrolled hypertension. They were underserved populations, and said this is be a benefit for the patients to help with their care. And so, they went big, right? Getting over 1,000 patients in 90 days was no small feat. But, they had kind of trialed it out for a couple of months, right? And saw the benefit to the patients. Patients were actually improving upon their blood pressure readings. They saw patients, not going to the ED who were already put in a program for a couple of months. So to them, it made sense to go large. And when they went large, they saw the benefit for the whole population, right? Not only did some patients enjoy that connection to Dr. Chuck, but more importantly, they felt that someone cared about them, right? Typically a lot of patients, a lot of underserved populations, a lot of patients who live in rural areas, they struggle with loneliness and depression, and they just, and not just things that not just associated with healthcare, but now, yes, something as simple as a blood pressure was really important because now they had a connection, right? So now they had a desire to kind of take care of themselves a little bit better, right? Eat a little bit healthier. They saw numbers go down because they were getting readings consistently. And so now they're saying, oh, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't eat that last piece of pumpkin pie, or maybe I should, try to do a little walking if I'm able to. And these were, simple behavioral changes, but because they felt someone cared because of the weekly follow-ups, right? Like we discussed, the automation that was set up. And then more importantly, the understanding of, why it's important to be on these programs. A lot of patients enjoyed that. And so, they had tremendous success with the patients. Plus, it was financially sustainable so they can continue to help more patients. And so obviously that's a small piece of everything they do as cardiologists, but it just made everything else so much better, right? And that was the key for him to kind of start these programs. So as you can see, the benefits, to the patients, to the practice, and to an area, right? To rural area in Georgia, it's just immense, right? Helping that many patients. Imagine how many lives you're changing, how many communities you're changing if you're doing something to that level. So let's talk a little bit the value framework, right? And so the way we kind of think about it, this is just a simple way to kind of mnemonic, if you will, to kind of just remember why it's important to kind of think through these type of steps as you kind of start your programs. So think about the value framework as just a way to start and scale any remote care programs. And the reason why this is important because if you saw my last video, my last live, we talked about this previously, that there will be new programs that will be announced that was going to be around remote care programs, right? We already kind of hinted, of the ones that they're out there now. We'll talk about them later, but they're going to be more around, clinical care workers, right? Social workers looking for help navigating in a hospital setting, looking for, different type of folks to help with, caregivers. So all these different programs, they're looking outside of the hospital, outside of the doctor's office, and they're finding new programs they can implement to kind of help these programs. And why is this? Because the previous value care programs have been so successful, right? And lowering costs of ED visits, helping with patient care. They have viable numbers for that. So the goal now is to start and then start scaling these programs. So you already have the infrastructure in place to continue to grow these programs for the future. Also, there's a proven process, to follow with this is what we follow with our clients. If you follow this kind of process, you'll see this results as well. And so, it's a simple way to kind of remember all the steps as you go through kind of building out your own program. And there's a way to get your organization aligned to execute, right? So if it's a simple way to remember, typically simplicity scales. So the more simple your message is, then the better it is to scale to your organization and to your culture, so they know exactly how to execute effectively when you're not around. And really, that's really what's key. So this framework, hopefully it helps you as you start to think about how you want to build out your programs in your medical office, in your physician group, or in your nurse group as well. So let's get into it. So first one is value-based care focus on better patient outcomes. So all these acronyms, this is a subset. There's other ones like annual wellness visits, transition care management that we didn't cover on this one. But as you can see, these different monitoring management programs, there's a lot of them, right? And we call them the three-letter acronyms, from CCM to RPM, PCM, PHI. The goal here is to understand that these programs are about ensuring patients get healthy, right? Ensuring that they stay healthy. And so really understanding how they work and how they kind of manage. And like I said, there's going to be more. I mean, I think by the last count, they're probably going to be about at least about a total of nine to different programs that are going to be launched, have launched over the last 10 years that CMS is investing in. So take advantage of this. And so this is the time now to understand these programs, and the results are there. The patients that are on these programs are getting healthy and staying healthy. So that's why we're seeing more of these programs come to the forefront. So now's the time to stay focused on it. Next, you want to assess your current patient population, determine, the best value-based care programs, right? Typically, you have to make sure they have the qualifying, diagnosis. And so, have to be seen in the last 12 months. And then Medicare with secondary insurance is extreme plus, right? So you want to make sure, you have the secondary insurance part of that. Because remember, we talked about the consent process, right? Typically, patients who are Medicare, this is a sustainable program, and Medicare will take care of that. But what we're seeing is that secondary insurance is so critical to make it something that's, for the long term. So if they have that supplemental insurance that helps cover those copays, that's going to be key, right? That way, it makes the program attainable for most patients, right? And also, you want to make sure they're seen in the last 12 months, and that's really super key, because think about it, you want to make sure you have that relationship that's already established, even if they're a new patient. And that's typically a great time to do their annual wellness visit, right? To make sure that they're taken care of, and you can kind of go through the process. So those are some of the things to kind of think about when you look at about assessing your current patient populations. You definitely want to leverage experts to implement this program to hundreds of your patients. So, there's a lot of experts out there now. These programs, are starting to get bubbled up to the forefront. The reason why experts are important is because they can give you new insights on these programs. Like I mentioned before, physician fee schedule is constantly changing. They're doing different things with these programs all the time. It's just really important to understand what insights you can gain, best practices on how to just do these programs, right? You may have a certain way you do it in your practice, but working with experts can kind of get you to the next level to really understand how to really implement these at scale. Then also, utilizing experts can help you augment already exhausted staff, right? Pandemic, we saw record levels of healthcare professionals, just experience burnout, and some unfortunately, are moving on from the field, right? But if you have mid levels, that need help, definitely bring in experts. There's nothing wrong with that, because that helps them do their job better. And maybe they have a specialty. Maybe this program is something that helps, but ultimately, having an expert in is just think of them as an add-on, right, to your current staff, so that you can do what you guys do best, which is really take care of the patient. And then you really want to make sure your staff feel at ease so they can do their work, their day job, and these other programs. And that's the way these programs stay sustainable, right? You're not going to run into that issue when you cancel programs because you had no growth, because a lot of times you had exhausted staff. And then finally, look, it's ultimately about, faster results, right? If, people think time equals money, but unfortunately, it's really time is so much more valuable than money. And what you find out is that, if you take a lot of time to kind of implement these programs, they languish there, and you probably lose a lot of effort and time and energy. Where if you just put a lot of upfront energy, right, investments, time, effort, you'll find that you get the results a lot faster, and they're more sustainable. And then the ongoing maintenance is not as bad, right? And so typically, that's always the challenge, just making sure that when you go into these programs, really invest the time and effort, and you'll get those faster results. And the way you can get those faster results is a coach, right? Or experts. Think about, the world-class athletes. They bring in experts to help them get achievement at a world-class level. And so if you're going to do these programs, and we believe every organization should strive to be world-class with their patients, their patients and their populations, then the goal is to ensure that you have the experts in that can help you get to that next level as you implement this new way of working, right? In healthcare, let's be honest, this is a totally new way. Fee for service no longer. This is dealing with a sustainable remote care type programs to really help you kind of leverage, experts to kind of get you to that next level. Finally, you want to uncover additional opportunities to increase patient retention and in-office visits. So, you want to catch those patient concerns outside of office, right? I think the statistic is most patients, spend 1% of their lives, in the hospital or with a doctor. So, what's the rest of the 99% used for? That's the time to kind of make sure there's constant checkups, right? Especially for, patients who are on Medicare, who are older. You want to catch those concerns because a lot of times they could be forgotten. A lot of them, we mentioned before, are living home alone, or if they have a caregiver, they may not see them every day. So a lot of needs, healthcare concerns are being left unmet. And so if you kind of catch those outside of the office, then, a simple conversation with the patient can get them into the ED beforehand, right? Or help them mitigate issues from, maybe things that are maybe non-medical, but can help them with their health long term. Also, the remote conversations can lead to an office visit. We've seen that time and time again. When you're having these conversations with patients, they trust you. And so if you say, well, you know what, you may want to just go, see the doctor earlier. We see you on schedule in the next 3 months, but, let's schedule you in to come in a little bit sooner to kind of see what we can do with those med changes, right? And I think that's really what's about, really forming these long-term connections with patients so they feel trust you. So it's a lot of the patients, it's difficult to go to the office, right? Sometimes, the planning goes involved, the timing and all that. But if that trust is built up with these communications, with remote conversations, then the patients trust that, hey, when you say, hey, it's time to maybe go into the office and talk to us or have a conversation, then that is something that they trust and they will make the effort to do so. We've seen it time and time again. Because ultimately it's about feeling connected to the doctor, right? And so this is that sense, even though the doctor may not be talking to them directly, they do feel that the doctor is aware of their situation. And then more importantly, so when they do see the doctor, maybe like once a year or twice a year, they feel like, it's not a whole new conversation. I mean, have you been to a doctor's visit and you may feel, yes, you may have seen the doctor for 5, 10 years, but you're seeing them once a year. It's almost like you're having a new conversation. Yes, they can look up meds and some history, but it's like, well, yeah, I told you that last time, and this flared up again. Oh yeah, that's right. Let me write that down. So you can kind of avoid a lot of that with some of the patients because now they're having these ongoing conversations that get notated and charted. So now the conversations feel more fluid, right? Because it seemed really like a conversation as opposed to just a one-sided, hey, this is what's going on with me. Oh, I missed that. Let me add that here. It really feels more connected. And then you get a retention with patients who feel like, hey, I'm being heard. I don't just have to, that's why I stay with my doctor for, indefinitely. And so those are some things that we've seen. And last but not least, look, the goal here is to continue to evaluate consistently so that you get those patient results that you want. Constant review helps with the improvement. It's been shown time and time again. One of the big things why you need consistent review is insurances change all the time. We've seen that time and time again where insurances, even prior to, open enrollment, have changed. Patients, moved on to different insurance plans or they may want to try something else. And so, understanding that is really key, right? So that you can get the results you want from the patients. And if they're in different insurances, then they probably have different rules around what's acceptable or not. So that's why it's important to kind of evaluate, monthly for patient results, seeing what stories come out of this. When you talk to patients, are they getting a benefit out of staying on the program? The purposes that they align to at the beginning, are they still the same? So they can kind of continue to talk about the goals of what they want to do with their health. And ultimately, if you don't measure, anything you don't measure will not improve, right? And so, this is key. Yeah, so if you don't measure, right, it's one of those things where, it's the way to understand exactly what needs to be changed, right? Likewise, when you have young children, you kind of constantly measuring, how tall they're getting, right? Because, know it's time to get a new pair of shoes. Likewise, people behavior change if they get positive feedback, and that positive feedback can be in terms of understanding that their numbers are getting lower, the A1C levels are lower, right? They can breathe easier, and it's quantifiable. So now it improves. They say, okay, I'm feeling better about myself. Let me do more of that, and then you have a self-fulfilling loop. Patient better behavior and change, and ultimately that produces a better, organization and program for your practice, because now patients are telling other patients about the program, and saying the benefits they're getting out of it. And so really what this ultimately was about, right? Making sure you provide the best patient care, and evaluating these programs monthly can get you there. So, you know, if you like this, this is a free, kind of framework you can kind of utilize. We call it value. It stands for the value-based care programs, focus on better patient outcomes. Assess, assess your current patient population, determine the best VPC or value-based care programs. You want to leverage your experts to implement this program to hundreds of your patients. Uncover additional opportunities to increase patient retention and in-office visits. And then finally, E, evaluate monthly for patient results. So if you remember that value acronym, can get you to the place where you need to be to kind of grow your organization in these new virtual care programs, and produce the value you need for your patients and for your practice. So I hope that was important. So one of the things we like to do, and before we kind of end the program, just kind of talk a little bit about our services, if you don't mind. So if you are struggling how to implement your value-based care strategy for coming up for 2024, even now, we offer several different opportunities to kind of help. We have a full suite of programs and software to help you navigate up the stack, right? From, guides to kind of implement these virtual care programs, to training programs, to software, to services, right? And so, we can help be that expert to kind of help plug in that gap if that's something of interest. So again, this is a soft sell. This is really about my education. We provide the framework free, but if you need help to get you there a little bit faster, we're here to help. And you can definitely schedule time with us at SynsorMed.com, practice.value-creator. So reach out to us if you have any questions around that. So with that being said, I want to see if there are any questions or anything to that nature. And so we can kind of see, if anyone has any questions about the programs or just in general. But don't see any questions right now. So, but definitely, this is one of the programs that this is a framework that we want to kind of provide to you and kind of give you a sense of, what we're seeing in organizations who are looking to kind of build out their programs, with these value-based care programs, and see the benefit that can offer them, right, when they kind of move forward in this path. So again, if we can help it anyway, please don't hesitate to reach out. Hope you enjoyed this training, and be on the lookout for our next monthly training or webinar. We should have one at the end of this month. But again, thank you for your time, and enjoy the rest of your lunch. Enjoy your weekend. Take care.